Hey guys, welcome to Unit 5, Lesson 1. So you probably noticed we're starting on a new unit here, Unit 5. We're going to be talking about transformations. Transformations are ways of manipulating or changing our original graph. And the easiest type of transformation is a vertical shift, which is up or down. That's what we're going to be working on today. And to recognize the function for a vertical shift, you want to look for this variable k being added to our original function. So f of x stands for our original function, and you want to look for a number. So k just stands for any number that is added to or subtracted from our original function. That will result in a vertical shift, which affects the outputs or y values of our graph. And if you remember, an input is an x value and an output is a y value. So just keep that in mind throughout this lesson. Now we're going to zoom in here. This is the graph of the absolute value of x. And the easiest way to think about absolute value is just how many units away from 0 we are on a number line. So regardless of positive or negative value, an absolute value will always be positive. So I'm just going to label here on the graph, we have f of x equals the absolute value of x, and then you can see g of x, that's our transformation, and we've added 3. So now we're going to move over to this table we have on the right-hand side. You see our input values, those are our x values. All right, and I'm just going to fill in the corresponding outputs. For -1, that is 1 unit away from 0 on a number line. 0, that is 0 units away from 0 on the number line. 1 is 1, 2 is 2. And I'm going to jump back to my graph to plot these points. Alright, so I have my x value is -1, and my y value, my output is 1. Plot that point. And I have 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 2. And I'm just going to trace that real quick, and then we can move along to our vertical shift here. So for the vertical shift, we have f of x plus 3. And the way you can figure this out using a table is you can just quite literally add 3 to every output that we have. So 1 plus 3 is 4, 0 plus 3 is 3, 1 plus 3 is 4, and 2 plus 3 is 5. All right. Now again, I'm going to plot these points over on the graph, and what will happen, you can already see the graph is drawn out over here, but I'm going to plot the points that we found using our table. And you'll notice that because every point on the graph shifts up 3 units, it causes the entire graph to shift up 3 units. So that is a vertical transformation moving up. And now we're going to look at a vertical transformation, but instead moving down. Now here we're looking at the graph of the square root of x, and then a transformation where this graph has been vertically shifted down 2 units. So when k, that number that's added or subtracted from our graph, is negative, when k is less than 0, the graph will shift down k number of units. In this case, it's 2 units. So what we're going to do, we were not given a table here, which you might not be, so I want to show you how to make your own. It's very simple. So I draw my table, and there we go. Remember, we're going to have our x values, our inputs, and then we're going to have our outputs for both our original graph and our transformed or shifted graph. So up top I'm putting x, on the far left our input, and then f of x, which is equal to, we know, the square root of x, and then our transformed graph, which is f of x minus 2. Now we have to select some inputs to use. So since the graph we're talking about is the square root of x, we want to use some x inputs that we know the answer to. So for example, I know the square root of 0 is 0. And I know the square root of 1 is 1. And I also know the square root of 4. That's 2. So I can just go ahead and put those answers in the second column there. And now, just as we did in the first example, I'm going to plot those points. So 0, 0, 1, 1, and 4, 2. And that's our top graph. So I'm going to trace that. And now we can move over to our outputs for our transformed graph. So f of x minus 2. And same as we did in the first example, I'm just going to subtract 2 from each of the answers that we had for the original function. So 0 minus 2 is negative 2, 1 minus 2 is negative 1, and 2 minus 2 is 0. And once I have those 3 points, I'm going to plot them over on the graph to the left, and you'll see, I'll trace those lines, and that is our graph shifted down 2 units. And then I'm going to call that g of x because it's a new function. So let's make sure we learned all the stuff we were supposed to learn. So can we recognize a vertical shift transformation from the symbols f of x plus k? Well, remember that it can be f of x plus k, or it can be f of x minus k. So as long as you can remember that, then you can recognize a vertical shift. Second, we want to be able to determine whether a function will shift up or down. Again, that's determined by our k value, whether it's greater than 0, less than 0, positive or negative. And lastly, we want to be able to create an input or output table for a vertical shift transformation and plot the points on a graph, which we did in our second example. And great job, everyone. Concludes our lesson.